Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 14, 2018 Combined Board of Education meeting. Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Jennings?
Present.
Mr. Medio?
Here.
Mr. Sobrana? Ms. Spinelli?
Here.
Mr. Ulrich?
Present.
Ms. Acosta? Okay. Mr. Boardley?
Here. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has called notice posting of this meeting to be sent to the following and announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, SNJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and the Administrative Office Bulletin, Public Bulletin Board. We have our flag saluters come to the front, please. Could everyone please rise for the flag salute?
Thank you to our Duran students. If you would stay there, our board members have some certificates for you. Mr. Jennings and Mr. Medio, if you'd be kind enough, and our principal and vice principal to get in. Gia's going to take a picture. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, and thank you for being here.
Mrs. Haley, do we have a resolution for executive session?
We do not.
Thank you. Dr. Gruccio, special presentations?
We do. We have a few this evening. First of all, I'd like to begin by apologizing. I know that it's warm in here and a little tight. We are waiting for 2 pieces of equipment so we can move back into the auditorium with an appropriate sound system. So thank you for bearing with us. They should be in a couple weeks, and hopefully by our December meeting we'll be able to be back in there. First thing I would like to do is introduce to you a new person to, well, she actually is from Vineland, but she is our new county superintendent, and I thought it would be nice if the board got to meet her and she could just tell you a little bit about herself. We're happy to have her here in Vineland with us. She's a Vineland High graduate, and her name is Leslie White Coursey. I'd like to welcome you, and if you'd like to just say a little bit about yourself, we're happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gruccio. As she said, my name is Leslie White Coursey, and I was raised here in Vineland, and I attended Vineland Public Schools, and I graduated from Vineland High School. I did attend Landis Middle School right here, so I'm excited to be back as your new Executive County Superintendent. Miss Peggy Nicolosi is now covering Salem, and I will cover Cumberland, and that includes 15 districts and 4 charter schools. So it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that I was able to see the children, the safeties. I was a safety growing up, so It's just a pleasure to be back, and I hope that I can be a help and a support to you and the board. Thank you for this time.
Thank you very much for
You're
taking the
welcome.
time to come out
No
and
problem.
meet us.
Thank you.
We look forward to working together. Thank you again. Okay, next, we're going to recognize one of Alpha Delta Kappa, one of our international honorary organizations for women educators. And I believe we have Diane Massey with us this evening. And who else is with us? Deb Palmieri, come on up. We're very happy to recognize you tonight. They put the showcase together that you see in the back, and they give out scholarships, they promote women in education, and they do a lot of wonderful things for our community. So we thought, being National Education Month, we thought it would be a wonderful time to thank them and recognize them tonight. So we're happy to have you here, and we have a little certificate for you, and we welcome you to make some remarks if you would like.
Just a heartfelt thank you for recognizing us. It's a great honor to be here tonight. We do many, many activities to help the Vineland community. I would like to thank my sisters that are here, Diane, Terry Godlewski, and Sue Chinichi. So,
Thank you so
and
much.
we will go on to do many, many other good things for Vineland.
Thank
Okay.
you. We appreciate that. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for all that you do for our women educators in our community. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay. Diane, can you come up and get in the picture?
Well, can Sue and Terry come up as well?
Sure. Who's ever here from the, come on up. I didn't see them back there.
Sue Ticchini and Terry Godlewski are the ones that actually put.
They did. They worked hard. Thank all of you for what you do for this organization. We truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. The next person I'd like to welcome up is Ed Kolekta from Ocean First Bank. And he is here this evening because one of our teachers, Dave Orlandini, won $10,000 actually for a model classroom grant that he applied for. And I don't think Dave, is Dave here? Oh, there he is. Okay, I'm happy you made it. We thought you weren't here. Please feel free to come up. We congratulate you and we thank you. We thank you very much and we congratulate you. And I'm going to turn it over to Ed.
I won't take too much of your time. The Model Classroom Grant is something that the Ocean First Foundation puts out. This year, we had 144 applicants, and we awarded 25 $10,000 grants, $250,000. We were really happy to see the participation that we got locally. The applications came through. And I went to the dinner that night, and of course, when I'm there, we don't know who the winners are because they're afraid we'll spill the beans and tell you before you get there. But sitting there and listening to these things read out, and then to hear Vineland High School, even though I'm from Bridgeton, graduated Bridgeton, my old school's now the prosecutor's office, little change, okay? But anyhow, it was really nice to see that this application was well done. I have with me tonight is the real check for $10,000 to
Thank
be
you.
used. This application was well done, and to be one of 25 of 144 is really, really shows a testament to the school itself and the effort put forth. So we thank you for participating because the Ocean First Foundation, and this is not a sales pitch, the Ocean First Foundation really, really walks it like they talk it when it comes to education. This year alone, just in New Jersey, we did $400,000 in scholarships, plus $250,000 in the Model Classroom grants, plus another $20,000 sponsoring every county's Teacher of the Year award. So Ocean First Foundation and education is just, it's walking it like you're talking and believing in it. So thank you so much for
Thank
participating.
you very much, and thank you for all you do for the community. Dave, would you be kind enough, after you get your picture, go ahead, if you'd be kind enough, just tell us a little bit about your model classroom project? Go ahead, Cedric, get in. Get in. Okay. Hi. I'm okay, it's good, you can do it. I'm good. I'm good back.
Yeah,
Ed, please extend our grateful thanks to the bank for all that they do for our community and for our education. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dave, if you'd be kind enough to just tell everybody a little bit about your project.
Yeah, we're going to use the money for the life skills program at the high school. Currently, we have several rotations: the Wawa Cafe, thrift store, the print shop, and the greenhouse. And we are going to use this to get a real greenhouse for the kids.
Very
So,
nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you again.
Okay, let's see where, next we have Mrs. Christina Craig from Johnstone School. Is Christina here? And we have two wonderful students that have been recognized, and she's going to talk a little bit about that, and we have a certificate for each of them tonight.
All right. Good evening. My name is Christina Craig. I'm the assistant principal at AMSA at Johnstone School. For those of you that may not know, that's the Applied Math and Science Academy. I would like to thank the Board of Education for allowing me the opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of our two AMSA VHS students. I've had the pleasure of getting to know them the last few months, and I am impressed with what they have already achieved, and they're only in their junior year. The Advanced Placement Program recognizes high school students that have demonstrated outstanding college-level achievement through their performance on AP exams. Two of our VHS AMSA students were recently designated AP Scholars with Distinction by the College Board. And this award is given to students who achieve an average score of at least a 3.5 on all AP exams and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of those exams. Both students who received the distinction based on their progress through their sophomore year were 2 of only 53 sophomores in the state of New Jersey to receive this honor, and the first ever from Vineland High School. Not only are these two students academically dedicated, but they are conscientious and humble. Each knowing that they were selected for the award, did not want to be recognized without the other. We are extremely proud of both of them and know that this is just the beginning. And they really didn't want to be recognized at all. I would like to congratulate both Jessica Mello and Jeremy Rasmussen.
We have our high school principal here, Suzette, if you'd like to come up and get in the picture as well. Christina, please. Thank you. Okay. It's always nice when we can start a meeting with so many wonderful accomplishments. So thank you again to all of you. We appreciate you being here. Just if they have any questions.
Thank you, Sue.
Any questions or comments regarding the HIB? Seeing none. Approval of minutes for October 3rd, 2018 combined meeting and October 3rd, 2018 executive session. Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
I'm going to abstain because I don't think I was at that one. Do we have any comments by the solicitor?
None.
Ms. Haley, do we have any pink slips for public comment on agenda items?
Yes, Suzanne Morello.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Suzanne Morello, Canterbury Lane in Vineland,
and I wanted to make some comments this evening on agenda item number 12, the dedication of the intermediate school on Lincoln Avenue. The entire process for that started on February 14th, and it concluded in October. And I certainly would hope that you will consider having the dedication on a Saturday, as all of the other dedications were, or a Sunday on a weekend, making sure that there is great communication with the family of the person being honored, because there are many people from out of town, comrades of Sergeant Pilla, who would like to attend, lots of family members, community support, and I think this is an opportunity to really showcase not only our district, but the city of Vineland, and make this into something very special. So I'm hopeful that there will be some time and effort put into this, not as long as it took to get it to happen, but perhaps, you know, a 50% shot. I don't think a 4-month window is that long. The weather would be better. That would give people who are coming from different states the opportunity to make arrangements, and perhaps get some people from the armed forces who might want to come also to be involved in this in some fashion. And again, thank you for thank you for using the policy. That's what it's there for. Hopefully you'll consider this request and make this into something really wonderful for the community. And this is kind of off topic, but there has been a lot of chatter around town about doing something to include those persons who were brought up and nominated in some way in the curriculum or some other fashion, that the students in town know what those folks were like and what they did for our community, and a lot of talk from people on Vietnam veterans as well. So I will volunteer to work on any committee and do anything to help get those folks, Mr. Charlante, the Vietnam veterans, the other Miles Lerman, I had a little brain bubble there for a second, all of the folks who really have amazing stories along with Sergeant Pilla, and make this whole process something greater than the parts. So thank you very much, and I'm hopeful I'll be able to get up at the end and say, great, what a great idea you had for the dedication.
Thank you, Mrs. Morello.
I have another yellow sheet, but it seems to relate to use of facilities, which would be at the end of the meeting. If I could have clarification from Brianna Davis, it says GSA need at VHS and middle schools. Is that for use of facility by Girl Scouts? No? Oh, okay. Is it an agenda item? Okay. Is that an agenda item? Okay. Are we allowed to do that?
Gay Student Alliance.
No, it's not an agenda item.
At the end.
Oh, okay, this will have to be at the end of the meeting, if that's okay. Thank you. Yes, we have a public session for comments at the end of the meeting for non-agenda items. So it seems like your topic is non-agenda. So you'll be allowed to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gruccio, motions and resolutions?
Yes. I'd like to recommend discussion of personnel items 1.1 through 1.2, retirements, resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, employment, transfers, students, substitutes, and extracurricular activities, and approval regarding salary increment withholding effective September 1st, 2018, for a middle school teacher whose name is on file with the board secretary, and I believe you received information on that from Dr. Rossi.
Questions or comments? Seeing none.
I'd like to recommend approval of personnel items 1.1 through 1.2.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes, but I have to abstain from 1.1C.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion on approval of trips and district travel.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion of a resolution providing the dates, time, and place of monthly board meetings per listed provided on the file with the board secretary.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion to adopt the 2019-20 budget preparation calendar.
Questions or comments? Mr. Media?
Yeah, I guess it was a few months ago, I asked for a preliminary report on what the administration planned to do as far as addressing this deficit. What is this current deficit that we're looking at, Mrs. Guccio?
At this point, we don't know exactly, but we're looking at possibly $13 million. And as we mentioned a couple meetings back, there is a whole list that we put together, and we encouraged any board member who would like to sit and go over the list to please contact Mrs. Haley.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend, I'm sorry, no. Do you have a question? I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the first reading and discussion of the following policy, number 8508, lunch offer versus serve.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the 2019-20 Vineland High School World Language Educational Student Trip to Barcelona, France, and Italy from March 30th to April 9th, which includes the cost of a nurse, excusing all chaperones and students from school.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the 2018-19 Vineland High School senior class trip to Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg, Virginia from April 17th to April 19th, which includes the cost of a nurse and excusing all chaperones and students from school.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion to enter into a dual credit articulation agreement with Cumberland County College for the 18-19 school year.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion of submission of the Executive County Superintendent 2018-19 New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum, which is New Jersey CUSAC, as the Chief School Administrator's Statement of Assurance attesting to the accuracy of the responses in the report of the best of her knowledge.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend approval of items 2.1 through 2.8.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
No on 2.8, yes on the rest.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion of the budgetary transfers for the general, school-based, and ECFA budgets for September 2018.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion of the board secretary and treasurer reports for September 2018.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the placement of special education students.
Mr. Media?
Yeah, a few months ago, I asked about a question about whether or not special education was getting money from the general budget. And I never got a clear answer on that, but looking at this report, you'll see there are 3 students returning who are getting $40,000 a year tuition payments, and 1 returning getting $42,000. Now, each student, I believe our average spending is about $20,000 for each student. And I'm kind of wondering where that extra money came from, because we're spending twice as much on each of these students, and we also have other students. I know there was one school we approved a few months ago, a $75,000 payment for that student. So that's the equivalent of 3.5 student expenditures. I don't need an answer right now, but I'll be looking for one in the future. Thank you.
Mrs. Godlewski, would you be kind enough to put something together that we could share with Mr. Medio and the board? Thank you. I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the staff funded by federal program salaries and funding percentages for the 18-19 school year as per the names provided and on file with the board secretary.
Questions or comments? No?
I would like to recommend discussion to accept the following funding. Ocean First Foundation Model Classroom Grant for Vineland High School, Young Citizens Scholarship Grant for Manny's Elementary School, Members First of NJFCU 2018 Teacher Mini Grant for Rossi School, and Southern Coastal Regional Employee Benefits Funds Wellness Grant for the program in the amount of $22,500.
Questions or comments? Mr. Jennings?
I have a comment. Thank you, everyone who took the time out to write for these grants.
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the annual maintenance reserve deposit worksheet, which is Form M1, indicating the required deposit in 2018-19 budget.
Questions or comments? No? Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure if it comes under here, but I can ask it. What's going on out in front of this building?
Paul, would you mind addressing that?
Yes, that is the planned parking lot. We're looking at installing 2 ADA spaces as well as 10 visitor spaces, really to acclimate into the building for doing business in Landis administration. We have the elevator located at the front of the building, and then the main entryway and security guard are there. So those are the design spaces that we're putting in.
That never came before the Facilities Committee. And I don't remember it coming up during budget discussions. And we also have plenty of parking. So why are we ruining the look of the front of this building when we don't have to?
This was something...
Wait a second. I'm not asking you, Mr. Farinaccio. That's not your place to answer the question. I'm asking the administration.
It's necessary for us to have handicap parking toward the front of the building and some visitor spots. We have people, although there's plenty of parking in the back, who can't get into the building, or there's nowhere for them to park if they're handicapped. Therefore, Helen can address where the money came from, but there was funding available in this year's budget, so we decided to move forward and put handicap parking and visitor parking in the front of the building so they can access the elevator easily.
Wait a second. I have to disagree with that because I see handicap parking spots on the side. There's plenty of parking in the back. The front of the building is just fine. And I don't understand why we're doing this when we just heard that there's a $13 million shortfall. Especially since, as I said, this never came before the Buildings and Grounds Committee.
If I may interject, I do recollect us having a discussion about parking being out front, but I think we put it off because of budgetary issues at the time.
We did originally put it off for that reason, and then Helen can address where the money came from and why we were able to move forward. But right now, the only place a handicapped person can get in is parking in the back or the side of the building, and they have to come in the ramp and then down to the front. The purpose of the elevator was for that reason, so that people could easily access the building. And Helen can explain where we were able to get the funding to do that project.
We budgeted for paving projects in Fund 12 in the infrastructure account. Both of the paving projects came in under the budgeted amounts, so there was extra money in that account for delegated for paving. So we used that money towards the parking lot.
Any other questions or comments? No?
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the comprehensive maintenance plan report for the following period: 2017-18 actual, 2018-2019 budgeted, and 2020-2021 planned.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the Early Childhood Program 3-year preschool plan for the 18-19 school year.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the submission of the Department of Ed Office of Early Childhood, the 2019-20 ECPA budget, which totals $18,747,583.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion to open a new account at the Newfield National Bank for DePalato Elementary School Student Activity Account. The following signers would be Sylvia Morano, Helen Haley, Louise King, and Daisy Mercado.
Questions or comments? Mr. Meadow?
If Mrs. Haley's leaving and at the end of December, shouldn't we have a different name on there? And 411 also?
We had started the paperwork on these at that time, and the bank filled it all out, so we were going to then change everything in December, just to get it started, so we wouldn't hold them up anymore.
Other questions?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the following name changes to the authorized signers of Winslow School Activity Account. We would be removing Deborah Quinn and Christina Craig and adding Renee Braxton, Deborah Flumenbaum, Lauren Delago, and Helen Haley.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the revised tuition contract between the Vineland Board of Education and Cape May County Technical School for 2 full-time students and 1 shared-time student in the amount of $4,791.30 per month from September 2018 to June 2019.
Questions or comments? None?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the tuition contract with Gloucester County Technical School for the Career Technical Program for the 2018-19 school year with a tentative tuition charge of $8,015.
Questions or comments? None?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the change order from Premier Enterprises LLC for Vineland High School North roof replacement for credit of unused contingency in the amount of $5,000.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the settlement agreement with AV Junior in the amount of $20,000 in accordance with the terms of settlement agreement on file with the board secretary.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the bus advertisement for Castle Contour for 1 year, 33 ads in the amount of $3,861.
Questions or comments?
Thank you for your business.
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the 2018-19 joint transportation contract between Lower Cape May Regional School District and the Vineland Public Schools for 1 student in the amount of $949.15.
Questions or comments?
We'd like to recommend discussion regarding the following Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives: 2018-19 Transportation Quoted Contracts, 2018-19 Transportation Addendum, 2018-19 Jointure, 2018-19 Bid Number 5 Student Transportation Services, and 2018-19 Fall Bus Evacuations.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend approval of items 4.1 through 4.18.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes, and on everything except for a no on 4.15 settlement agreement.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. We have any questions or comments regarding the bills for September 2018? Seeing none? Motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes,
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. We have committee reports. Mr. Ulrich.
Go ahead, Nick.
The Finance Committee met on October 29th. In attendance was myself, Cedric Holmes, Tom Ulrich, Dr. Ruccio, John Frangipani, Nathan Fry, Dr. Rossi, Helen Haley, Scott Musterell, and David Hart. First, we discussed the EPCA budget. Lynn Monteleone and Victoria Silver presented the budget. They informed the committee that the per pupil rate charged to the providers increased from 100 to 225. We also discussed budget line items and cuts. Total of $576,000 was cut from the budget. Next, we discussed the lease of Leuchter. Ms. Haley presented us a 5-year lease from a potential tenant. We discussed increasing the rent 5 to 10% each year, no presence of the board in the building, and Wayne Weaver would have to approve any changes that they would like to make to the building. We also discussed the surplus from fiscal year 2017-18. Surplus generated from fiscal year 2017-18 will be applied to the fiscal year 2019-20 budget. As we discussed earlier, the shortfall projection, Ms. Haley went over a potential $13.5 million shortfall. This is before any tax increase or miscellaneous increases or decreases. We discussed attorney fees, OPRA, and associated costs for renaming of Lincoln Ave Middle School. Lastly, we discussed the wellness grant that Mr. Fry and his team wrote for. It was for approximately $28,000, and we were awarded $22,500.
Thank you. Mr. Ulrich.
The Policy and Personnel Committee met tonight before our board meeting. Present was myself, obviously, Meg Spinelli, Dr. Mary Gruccio, Dr. Joseph Rossi, John Frangipani, and Frank DiDomenico was present for the first personnel item, our alternate counsel. Mr. DiDomenico discussed a 10-year charge case and provided the board with provide the committee with an update. The arbitrator assigned to the case after presentation by both the district and the teacher's attorney ruled in the district's favor, but did not agree on the termination. The employee was given a 120-day suspension with loss of pay of permanent loss of increment. The employee also cannot conduct one-on-one mentoring with students. The district must decide if it wants to appeal the arbitrator case, but we were advised by legal counsel that our chances of winning are very slim compared to the outcome. So the district is not moving forward with an appeal. The business administrator post has been posted. So Helen is going to leave us. There are also a opening in Human Resource Office due to a retirement, and that is that needs to be filled, and that will be posted also. And a middle school teacher who's not meeting the responsibility of the job requirements as a teacher is recommended, and the board already voted on a increment withholding effective September 1st. And that concludes our discussion with the Policy and Personnel Committee tonight.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Mr. Meddy?
Buildings and Grounds had a report. Part of, most of what we talked about had to do with ongoing negotiation discussions. So that, the minutes aren't available until after that's concluded.
Any other reports?
If I could make, is there any more committee report? No. I just wanted to make 2 comments. Mr. Fiocchi, in your report, you were correct when you said 225, but today we had a meeting with providers. So if we could just adjust that, it's now going to be 165. That way the minutes will reflect the correct number. And I just wanted to explain the wellness grant that we received. Out in the music building where the fitness center was placed, that wellness grant is what paid for that. It didn't come out of our district budget, so that has paid for the facility, and anybody who's a district employee is welcome to use that facility. It should be open next week. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Dr. Ruccio.
So get healthy.
Items proposed for review for discussion or adoption by board members. Discussion regarding the scheduling of the dedication ceremony for the renaming of the Lincoln Avenue Middle School. It's open for discussion. Mr. Ulrich?
I'll start. You know, I think it is a good idea to not rush into the naming of this facility. It can be a definite good thing for Vineland that we're going to recognize an American hero, a member of our military who sacrificed his life during an operation that the United States military undertook in Somalia. So I would have to tend to agree with Ms. Morello that there's no sense to rush it. I think a Saturday would be actually a great time, and we could really work it into a nice community event, and hopefully get a nice turnout and represent Vineland well. So I would be in favor of that proposal, moving to a Saturday and not putting a rush on it. Make it something that's going to be stand out and give us some really good publicity.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Medio?
I've received a lot of enthusiasm, let's say, in the community. I've had some people more than willing to help on a committee if the board wanted to put one together. And I'd like to volunteer to chair that committee if my fellow board members are willing to accept that.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a, what was the original date?
We looked at dates in December, and the family said none of those dates worked.
Okay.
So typically, it is the district that puts these kind of events together. We have no problem doing that. I think we've done a fine job in the past. If that doesn't work for the family, Mr. Medio asked that we wait till March, so I would be happy to do that. We don't want to schedule something in the middle of winter and then have a problem with weather. The only reason we tried to do it in December was so that the board that voted for this would be able to be present and be a part of the ceremony itself. So obviously, we'll invite those people back, and they can still be a part of the ceremony, but that was the intent of holding it in December. So we can hold off until March, and, you know, I think we are capable of doing a good job. We've always done it in the past, and we'll move forward and contact the families for some dates in March, and we'll move from there.
Make sure it's a sunny day. Can you do that, Mayor?
I can try. I'll put the Blessed Mother in the window.
You know, it would be great to, you know, we have an award-winning high school band to have the band, you know, with this national anthem and stuff.
We would like to use the band that's at the school, not the high school, but at the school
Okay.
there. Only because it's their school,
I got
and we
you.
feel that they should be involved.
All right.
Thank you.
You can use both bands.
Any other discussion? Any motions?
We have one more emergent item, though.
Yes. No motions. We'll move on to the emergent items with prior approval. Approval regarding professional service contract addendum between the Vineland Board of Education and newborn nurses, a subgroup of the NBN group to provide LPN nursing services for students on the abbreviated school day at a rate of $65 an hour. Questions or comments? Seeing none? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. At this time is the opportunity for the public to address the board.
Brianna Davis?
Good evening. My name is Brianna Davis, and I'm a freshman at VHS and a GLSEN National Student Council member. GLSEN is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, which is an organization that focuses on inclusive classrooms for all students, including LGBTQ+ students and students of color. Today I'm here to talk about the need for active gay-straight alliances at the high school and the middle schools. Other students and I feel the need for an active GSA at our school because of the concerning amount of homophobia and transphobia that we witness going on every day. When I say active GSA, I mean a student-led group that provides a safe and supportive environment for LGBTQ+ students and their peers based on activism and conversation. Now, some of you may be thinking, VHS does have a GSA. Well, yes, technically we do, but last year's advisor recently resigned. No advisor equals no club, and from what I've seen, finding a new advisor is no one's priority. One marking period of this year is already over, and we missed a lot of important days GSAs focus on, like Ally Week, LGBTQ+ History Month, and this week, which is Trans Awareness Week, just to name a few. GSAs are so important for many LGBTQ+ students in high schools and middle schools. In recent surveys from GLSEN, studies show that the presence of GSAs may help to make schools safer for LGBTQ+ students by sending a message that biased language and harassment will not be tolerated. Biased language such as racist, sexist, and homophobic remarks can make school an even more hostile place for all members of a school community. Homophobic remarks such as the slur aimed at gay male students in Dyke are among the most frequently heard types of biased remarks in U.S. schools. The Equal Access Act requires public schools to allow these types of groups to coexist along with other non-curricular student groups. Students in schools with GSAs are less likely to hear homophobic remarks in school on a daily basis than students in schools without a GSA, which is 57% compared to 75%. GSAs related to greater physical safety for LGBTQ+ students. LGBTQ+ students who attend schools with a GSA are less likely than those at schools without a GSA to report feeling unsafe in school because of their sexual orientation, which is 61% versus 68%, or because of the way in which they express their gender identity, which is 38% versus 43%. Having a GSA may also make school more accessible to LGBTQ+ students by contributing to a more positive school environment. Queer students in schools with GSAs are less likely to miss school because they feel unsafe compared to other students, which a quarter, 26% of students in schools with GSAs missed school in the past month because they felt unsafe, compared to a third, 32% of students at schools without GSAs. What can you do to help? Well, as administrators, we expect you to advocate for your students, and today we're asking you to do just that. Advocate for your LGBTQ+ students by getting a GSA up and running by prioritizing finding a GSA advisor at VHS. Use your advantage and influence as a board member not only to help the VHS GSA, but promote and carry through with the idea of GSAs at Memorial, Lincoln, and Wallace. In schools throughout the U.S., abhorrent things happen to LGBTQ+ kids every day. I know this for a fact because one of those things happened to me at our very own Petway Elementary School. I came out as a lesbian in 5th grade, and as usual for LGBTQ+ kids, bullying started. I told the guidance counselors, who told the principal, and the principal told the guidance counselors, then told my father. We had meetings with multiple people, including one of the assistant superintendents, who proceeded to say being gay was a phase and compared it to dyeing your hair purple. School administration not only outed me to my parents, but did nothing to protect me from bullying and students. Thankfully, my parents are extremely supportive, but some kids aren't as lucky. Gay Straight Alliances create safe spaces that some kids don't have at home, places that LGBTQ+ kids can talk about and find resolutions for their problems. You've heard just some of the statistics, and GSAs are extremely effective. So I'm asking you as elected officials, please defend and protect all of your students, including LGBTQ+ students, by using your power as a board member to get school administrators to prioritize Gay Straight Alliances and protect their LGBTQ+ students.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to address the board this evening?
Yes, hi, Suzanne Morello, Canterbury Lane, I'm back. Something was kind of left hanging in the air there. Is there going to be an ad hoc committee hanging from Buildings and Grounds for the dedication or not? That just kind of laid on the ground.
At this point, board activities, as you're aware, are confined to policy issues. And this is not a policy issue. So central administration can work with the board to coordinate this with the family and what's convenient with the board, or not convenient, but approved by the board.
Okay, well, that leads me to my next question. Perhaps if the money that was spent on the attorneys for the Oprah Act was spent or not spent at all, because I would hope that the people in the administration and our attorney, Mr. DeSanto, and I'm sure he understood the Oprah request very clearly, because you don't like something doesn't mean you keep going until you find somebody who's going to tell you that you like some, that they're going to give you the answer that you like. I mean, the night of the policy hearing, there was an attorney there who sat through the entire thing. I don't know why. It's pretty clear what the policy is. It's pretty clear what the Open Public Records Act is. It should be pretty clear to take a Sharpie marker and redact private information. I don't understand what all is going on with you guys. There were 6 comments all night. I don't expect mud wrestling, but 6 comments on lots of things that would seem to be fairly complicated. You have a $13.5 million shortfall rolling your way, and there's a paving project out front. I'd really like to know, so get your Open Public Record Act attorney on, what the total cost of moving to this building is. Because sitting here tonight, I hear giant shortfall, paving, sound system, God only knows what all else is happening that the public doesn't know, and the hint of raising taxes again. You have a community, the strategic plan that the district put in place that was done when I was last on the board calls for community collaboration. You have people from the community who want to collaborate with the dedication, and you're sitting there telling me that that's not a policy issue, that that's something with administration, their job. Well, that's lovely. But the way to include community and get buy-in from the community when you have people who want to help and who want to be involved and who aren't going to change the outcome. The school is going to be named the Sergeant Dominic Pillis School, whether there's input from the community or not. What could be the downside of letting people who want to become engaged be engaged? What could be the downfall of having, as Mr. Ulrich suggested, maybe the high school band work with the intermediate school bands? All of the music program could be involved. I don't understand it, and in the past, I know personally I've been invited to lots and lots of dedications that I was involved in voting to approve buildings and other things. That's just a specious comment. So I hope that you will think about including your community that elects people who are sitting up here, who pay the taxes to support our piddly little part from the city of Vineland. But I hope you'll consider including people and get on board and do something like the StoryCorps stories for the other folks that were nominated and for other people from the city of Vineland, so we can start to mesh and include people from the community back into the school district. Thanks.
Vicki Miller, Vineland, New Jersey. I'm going to talk about the budget. I hear that, you know, that special ed costs this, costs that. I hate to tell you, special ed is here to stay, and it's only getting bigger. I told you this before. I don't know if you have the committee or not yet, but I think you should get a committee. We put a lot of money into Landis on the turf. They're complaining about in here. How about the backyard? If we have that kind of money, we should be putting it in our children. It says the Vineland Board of Ed. Let's get together and support our children. That's what the Board of Ed is here for. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none. Do you have anything for old business or new business? Seeing nothing. Board member remarks, Mr. Medio.
I think something that most of the board members are concerned about is budgeting and money. And I don't want anybody to misunderstand my questioning about special ed, because the questioning is not about whether or not we need special ed. That's a ridiculous question. We have it. My question is, where is the justification and how does the money work where we're spending $40,000 on students, individual students, when my understanding is their share of the money is $20,000 out of the budget? How are you spending $75,000 on one student when their share is $20,000? If you want to talk about putting money into special ed in the district, I'm not opposed to that. I'm the one who's advocating for it. Instead of putting that money into towns outside the district and school systems outside the district, I want to keep that $55,000 per student and that $20,000 per student in the district. I want to spread that money around to all the students who deserve it. And I want to know whether or not money is being taken away from certain students to help other students. I think everything I said is very reasonable. I think I should have 8 other board members agreeing with me and asking the same kinds of questions. So this concept that because you ask a question, you're automatically opposed to something is something that's very short-sighted and doesn't really have a place in any of these discussions. And that's the last time I'll address that sort of question or that sort of statement. The question is, what are you going to do now that you have to make cuts? Somebody's got to get shortchanged. Are you going to spread it around? Or are we going to have special interest groups who have an adverse effect on the education of all our students? Thank you.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes, Mr. Boardley, this is for you, brother. Thank you for giving us your time, and thank you for being adult about it and coming in here and running this meeting just like you would normally do. Also, I got this wonderful thank you card, and I want to tell the kids it means a lot that it's handwritten for, I drove a flatbed truck for the homecoming parade, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun. Now it's even more fun that I have this card that I can hold on to, and all the children wrote a special thank you in there in their own writing, and I appreciate that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Mr. Fiocchi?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, just a few things. I just want to say that I find it mighty ironic that the board was scrutinized by the public for how the duration of time that we spent on the process of naming the school. And now that we've made the decision, now it's, oh, don't rush it. We have time, do it in a few months. Just want to make that point. I want to thank you, Mrs. Haley, for your time and your effort and your passion to this school district, and I wish you the best. Lastly, I want to thank and welcome Ms. Leslie Corsi, who I've known for 21 years, and welcome and congratulations on your new position. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Ulrich?
Yes, I'd too like to welcome our new Executive County Superintendent. And I have one request. As the largest district in the county board meetings are held on Wednesday nights, which conflict with our board meetings. And frankly, I'm not going to miss our board meeting to go to a county dinner. And I've been on the board for probably 10 years, and it wasn't really, didn't make any difference. I've squawked about it before, so I'm asking you that if you could go to your other superintendents and see if there's any flexibility of maybe rotating that date so that boards could actually be represented and see what the other part of the county is doing, because as board members, we don't get a chance to interact, talk to other board members, unless it's going to be a school board conference. So that's my ask. And congratulations, it's a pleasure to have a new face on board. I'd like to thank our student who came in tonight to speak about LGBT plus situations. They are real. It is true. I happen, in my second part of my life, I got a real great opportunity to be employed by a great company who I'm not going to reveal, but one of their focuses is on that very topic, to encourage people of different backgrounds, different diversity sections, and they spend a lot of time marketing to recruit future employees to an environment that they can work in, grow in, and that has acceptance. So that was a brave thing you did tonight, and I really appreciate you coming up to the board to raise awareness for that cause. So congratulations, and we'll try to find out why you don't have an advisor, right? Seems like a simple thing. The policy, this was a very difficult process to go through. There's always going to be people that are unhappy. For the sake of the people that weren't selected, the policy to actually name a section of a building and stuff doesn't require that public hearing and all that stuff. So we can move on those actions. If a community member would request that a certain room or something, we can actually move on that with very little discussion and make that happen. So it doesn't require, it's a different policy than the renaming of naming of a school or renaming of a school. I also realize that December's here. We have a new board reorganizing in January. But I think looking at the policy, it needs to be tightened up. And it's largely a board policy, obviously, and the board's making the decision the way it's set up. So one is we have to decide, do we want to keep that? Do we want to have a part where we have a committee with the public? There's some different options. But I think most importantly, since it is a board process, that probably we should, and I'm confident that Dr. Gruccio will work with the new board to do this, we should work as in a committee. I don't think we need an ad hoc committee. We can modify our bylaws and create one, and then we can modify the policy very simply and require one. So I don't know that we need to do that, because I think we can do a lot more with collaboration and cooperation. There is a lot of public support to have this be special, and not that anything's not special. Like Dr. Gruccio said, they do a fantastic job. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually recognize a member of the military from our town, an Army Ranger, who meant something. So we have a special opportunity that we can take advantage of. I didn't agree with the contentious process. I hated it. I hate being up there. I knew what it was going to be like. I've been through these processes before. But I really think that we should put our differences aside, whether we supported whoever, and we should work to make this the best community event so that we can highlight Vineland High School, its students, and its community. And I feel strongly about that, and I don't think there's a need to modify policy, even though I would like to. When the board reorganizes, I would like to tighten up that policy. It needs to be tightened a little bit, and so we can have that process a little cleaner than it was. But that's a minor thing. I don't think we need to change anything, have an ad hoc committee. I think that the superintendent will be more than willing to work with the board and work with the family and make sure we do something that, is going to highlight what we stand for. And, that's freedom. And that's education and equality and justice. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Spinelli?
None at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Gucci?
Oh, darn. I just have a couple things to say. First of all, welcome, Leslie. I look forward to working with you, and thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. We appreciate it. I know you're busy, and you represent many districts, so thank you for being here. Secondly, Brianna, it takes a lot of courage to come up and speak in front of a large crowd, and I want to thank you for doing that. I don't know if you've had a conversation with your principal, but that's where it should begin. And if they're able to afford an advisor, they can always, move forward to try to put that club in our Schedule B things, and it will come before the board. But I think it's wonderful that you got up and spoke tonight. And please talk to your principal, and we'll go from there to see what we can do to help you, okay? All right, and also regarding the other honorees for when we dedicate the building, I have written to the board. I can put that forward as superintendent, and I've heard from all but 3 board members. So we are moving forward. We will have a picture and a plaque of the other 2 finalists. One will go in the media center, and one will be in the gym. So we will recognize them as well. And last, I'd just like to, on behalf of all of us, extend our sympathies to Mr. Medio, who just recently lost his mother. We're very sorry for your loss, and we want you to know that you're in our thoughts.
Hey, Jeff. One other thing, too. While the board was out before the election, we did lose one of our district teachers, lost a battle with cancer.
Yes, from Rossi School.
From Rossi School, Jess Sutherland. Terrible situation. 3 kids, probably about 35 years old. So, our hearts and prayers, obviously with Eugene's family, with our
we just lost
family.
a little girl, too, who was 5 years old. So, unfortunately, there's been a lot of tragedy, but I hope you'll keep all of those families in your thoughts and prayers.
I don't have anything for this evening, so thank you, Dr. Corsi. Welcome, or Mrs. Corsi. Everyone have a good night. Motion to adjourn? All in favor?